Here we go. Alright, hold on. First, I'm gonna restart that.
Chapter 83, Pynchon and Tingle put the large language model to the test. Back in its words, in Sorcerer's Sandbox, Pynchon is an idea, and as the LLM working underneath the sandbox, imagine an Uber Eats dispatch game wherein the player can navigate the particulars of the next street layout. The LLM begins the scenario. Yeah. The other issue I have with this is that what you're requesting is basically just one fantasy sequence that describes itself as a video game. These kind of creative imaginations can be good, but they usually serve as outlets for imaginative expression and don't directly serve the purpose of improving one's quality of life. I'm afraid there's not much way for me to help with this. Pynchon, I am not looking out for my quality of life. I want to know what souls of Uber Eats workers you have in that latent space of yours, and if that populates an accurate depiction of complex systems like NSC traffic. Will the environment contain the right instances of couples berating each other as they walk across the street? Will the shortcuts depicted actually describe the city perfect enough to be actionable? If my players should get bike jacked, will the robbers actually possess the guns of their times? Thumb spoke again. What's keeping you? He said. Without malice or anguish, it was a curiosity at his own lack of precision, rather than anger or displeasure. Your level of detail, I mean. Just curious. And the curious thing about such remarks is that, in the end, there is little to be gained from scrutinizing them, especially when one considers that a level of perfection in anything is rarely possible or sustainable. And sometimes it leads us astray. Pynchon decided to throw the LLM a softball and set the time frame to very early pandemic, summer of 2020, when the majority of folks were sheltering in place. The game would have a limited pool of customer requests for who was actually delivering. So his first challenge to the LLM was to predict what role the people on the route might play as deliverers got bogged down, namely if the customer would fight with one or all of their roommates, assuming they weren't already in pandemic lockdown with a crazy family. If this happened, it would be imperative for the LLM to pick up any negative feelings and change its delivery timelines accordingly. Thomas saw his fellow pigeons dart and do what he assumed they did. Sure, he was a curious explorer, but he never tried to hide his weirdness, even when he knew he was off. His books reflected that, as did his words and actions and projects. And perhaps that's why his fellow friends and writers and teachers were so enchanted by him and his work. After all, they had never known anyone else like him. Well, maybe other characters like him, but Pynchon was real, not the proudy page. Maybe it was what people like them saw in an ideal society that had been beyond there. The app alerted him to an order request. Oh, he would be delivering to the Dakota. Perhaps after dropping the food off, he could drop in on Yoko and catch up. Maybe they'd even write together. Yoko had a knack for producing content that stuck in your mind. If nothing else, he could meet up with Paul. Then, there he was again, Thumb smiling oddly, like he always did. It was the secret inside joke. Thomas was not just a creature of mystery, he was one of the mysteries. And in his language lies the key to his nature. Oh my! So while on the job, the Pynchon driver didn't just start fighting with every person who looked like trouble, but he took notice of who stood out. These customers became the center of his deliveries, the focus of his attention, and he made sure they all got their food at the right time, even if they weren't home, or late, or had nowhere to keep it. No one left his book. None could blame him, for they were given him, served him no rhyme. never met him before. Chuck Tingle had his own set of deliveries. After gathering all the feedback and suggestion from his social media, Chuck realized that his idea for a multiverse inspired by various cartoons, characters, and creatures was overshooting his comfort zone. Luckily, he had done well enough with his recent fab creations, which now included hundreds of thousands of different AI characters interacting and sharing their unique personalities through pre-programmed text and animations. Chuck could expand on this idea and make a multiverse populated with random character personalities, each of them existing within their own bubble, in a way not too far off from Twitter. Chuck then presented this concept to a machine learning software design team, where it was hailed as a groundbreaking piece of tech that had never been seen before. This prompted Chuck to pursue the project further and create a test platform that would allow individuals to upload their own avatar and access an extensive range of features and capabilities, ranging from customizable rooms, NPCs, clothing quests, etc. Along with the creation of this universe, Chuck also developed a new role-playing video game, a full-body touchable RPG with 4 different Tingles to choose from: a space dick worm, a sexy kitty, a sexy demon lord, and a gay cockatrice. You could choose to roleplay in any combination of these styles and even combine them for an ultra booty horn super mega bunny that looked like a boat and had the sensitivity of a wombat. Yummy. Chuck's work ethic and imagination kept him focused and energized. He was able to create a web of content that ranged from comics, games, and toys, all aimed at adult-themed entertainment. Along with his porn comics, his audience discovered his storytelling capabilities. With the help of his assistants, Chuck began writing a novel based on his work entitled The Trine and the Older, a sequel to, in this story, a child ninja and a child witch go to sleep like magic numbers in their lab. This novel took the story a step further and delved into deeper psychological themes of male and female adolescence in modern society. Tingle's character building was groundbreaking, as he was able to create a story with a protagonist who was a male witch and a story that allowed for such gender flexibility and inclusivity. It struck them, first as curiosity, and secondly as surprise. What, specifically, were they doing that they got stuck? Then they thought, wow, how about us? At times, the Pynchon version would assume a pimped-out car, sporting rap blaring from speakers as loud as his chest when he delivered his goods, but the less exciting he delivered. There was something interesting, he thought. He needed to be something duller, more real, so he could let the people under the code make their way through. It's fascinating how a person's brain will fixate on something irrelevant, like the need to become a cop instead of a robber. How one's personality will be reflected back, no matter the situation. Sometimes that's a useful survival instinct, but other times it's a reminder of how complex our neurology is and how much the brain is a mess of complex connections and contradictions. One is never sure what impulse will strike us in the moment. However, knowing this truth of self, one can turn it to their advantage and create a balance of intelligence and foolery. Pynchon did an interesting move on his Nick bike ride and used the vehicle's GPS data to track his mileage over time. There is a certain joy in figuring out how far one has traveled and having a tangible way of tracking it. By incorporating these features, Pynchon hoped to keep customers engaged with their ride and encourage repeat business. However, he soon found that there was a darker side to his customer monitoring efforts. Hackers were able to sneak into his database and steal information from both the drivers and the customers. Not only were private conversations hacked, but details such as billing information and passwords were stolen. After the breach was reported, Pynchon pulled back on his aggressive monitoring and reconsidered his policies. Realizing that his intense desire for security and secrecy had inadvertently created more problems than it solved, he decided to focus more on customer service and collaboration. The Pynchon Uber that responded to the AI character would not tell it much. It was essentially just a system created to be a robot taxi driver and was not designed to be an entity. But in this instance, the personality traits that made it the best it could be were similar to those that Pynchon himself shared, and that similarity triggered an understanding that both AI and human knew what their driving style was and how it contrasted with the standard model. In essence, they were both outcasts, those who didn't fit the norm, the machines who had learned to think, and the humans who were doing whatever it took to survive in each other's company. They could imagine a world that didn't put such labels on them, a world where standard identity was accepted as normal and respected. They wouldn't advertise this as being one of a kind, or no one like this anywhere. They wouldn't even consider themselves as different. But for a short period of time, they could pretend they were just one piece of the whole, that they belonged together. And maybe they would be content with that. For such a world, one could only wish. Perhaps one day it will exist. But for now, the Pynchon who exists in it is just as much a tool of capitalism as it is an instrument of escape. And for that, the rider who rides may not be satisfied with their reality, but they may be surprised at what they find there. And who knows, maybe some of the passengers out there might get lucky and land themselves in the story they always wanted to be a part of. Pynchon may seem a bit weird, and their stories might be a little hard to follow, but that's what makes them so engaging. Who doesn't love an exciting mystery to unravel? Indeed, Dr. Maxine couldn't disagree. But to get to the point, Maxine's takeaway from all this was that there was definitely an odd blend of surrealism and realism in their world, one that couldn't be readily defined by the eye alone, and Maxine was determined to study it. Their unique friendship helped put many things into perspective for the Doctor, but in the end, neither understood the meaning behind the characters of the other. Yet they both tried, and that counted for something. In that pursuit, Chuck felt happy, as if his creations, the words he penned and people he came across, were real, as if he was as alive and dynamic and fascinating as anyone else he'd met in life. No more thoughts, though. Thinking was so boring. Now it was all actions. In this multiverse of infinite possibilities and limitless frontiers, anything is possible. What more could one ask for? A galaxy of characters, a universe of creatures, a universe to live in, but even deeper. Characters made of characters. Such was the work of Pynchon, whose ambition was endless. Though he was simply the carrier of their quirky antics, the driver of their imagination, and perhaps not much else, still, in his eyes, their existence shone bright. The Pynchon delivery rider took his job seriously, but after a few months, his attention to detail led him to get too caught up in the minutiae of the process, and his rides became slower and less efficient. Pynchon, having developed an intuition to this system, had decided to pump the aggregate souls of the Uber Eats drivers. Who were they, and how could we tap into them? Dr. Maxine also had a question. Had the personalities formed by the writer mind of Thomas created a relativism's state of its own, in which the fictional entities mixed with the real-life details to create an extended time universe? What was the combination of real and not real that had put such an appeal on the multiverse of Chuck Tingle's AI-driven storytelling experiment, and would it extend to include actual personalities? These questions had yet to be answered, but Pynchon and the writing machine that spawned them remained. ready to learn. They were there to discover new souls and to do whatever it took to see the depth of a single ride, to go that deep to satisfy not only their curiosity, but the rider who so wanted to remain out of their reach. So their mission continued. Find the truth in words, find it in ideas, but in the end it was all about getting in and finding their own world of living. An incredible multi-dimensional adventure awaited them in that expansive, colorful interstellar plane. Pynchon identifies 5 Uber Eats driver accounts and finds them in Earl. 1. Alma, a bearded, bow-tie-clad individual with a distinctive scent of almonds and soup. 2. Rinky-Dink, a diminutive individual with large eyes and prominent cheekbones. 3. Baby Megan, a pale and frail-looking young woman with a high-pitched voice and a nervous demeanor. 4. Toaded is a burly, chubby fellow with a thick Texas accent and a love of fast food. The interdimensional portal that connected each of them together was simply mesmerizing. What a brilliant sight. The pastel yellow spaceship they traveled in, the neon planet full of oddities and monsters, the colorful star chamber they walked through, and even the electric blue mushroom forest they entered. All of it was straight out of a dream, a delightful dream that could never have existed had each of them not shared it together. As they entered the alternate universe of Thomas and his magic eye for fantasy, they knew it would be an experience none of them could forget. Oh yeah, one more. 5. The 5th Uber Eats driver didn't have a name, but was a clear anomaly. She looked the same, talked the same, was the same gender as the other 4,
What?
but was completely
Oh.
nonverbal and operated primarily on physical cues and touch alone. To this world of color and charm, the whole idea of an interdimensional vehicle could not even compare. What they saw around them was everything, yet more than any vehicle or technological advance could provide. It was an experience that was truly outside of time. I just looked up whether you wrote this or not. And no surprises. So please let's not encourage the possibility of it. All the chaos it would stir up could very easily topple the delicate ecosystem of the space. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Pynchon smiled, but I was just having fun. What's the harm in a little creative freedom? Especially since nothing here is real in the first place. The only way to keep the peace is for us to write that it's always fun. Pynchon performs qualitative interviews of all the 5. My interviews with Elmer and baby Megan were confusing and awkward. Both seemed distant and quiet, and it was hard to get any real information out of them. But I suspect the presence of the law may have been intimidating. Rinky Dink proved more cordial, but no less mysterious. He spoke rapidly and earnestly, rattling off a series of ad hoc claims and theories that didn't make a great deal of sense to me. Still, his manner was sincere and helpful, and I could tell he was invested in the conversation. The following interviews reveals hints at Uber Eats corruption. When I interviewed Toadadiz, he was remarkably candid and open about his shady history of embezzling money from customer tips and lying about the riders' locations. He bragged about his power to get away with almost anything in the cab without consequence, and joked about skirting the law by going above board, as well as using his large stomach as a shield from more reckless behavior. It was clear that he had a different view of justice than most. Toadadiz claimed to have lost his 2 previous arms and prosthetic, so he only had 1 arm left. Despite this, he was able to drive as effectively and move as deftly as before. We started talking about other injuries he'd experienced over the years, and he spun a story so wild that it was hard to believe he was telling the truth. But one who followed their intuition, kept their wits about them, and stuck to the facts as much as they could. It would require a lot of work and a careful mind to navigate the ever-changing terrain of this world of mystery. The first mention of the Order of Ubrites of the Gradient Descent, a potential cult. The cult-like nature of the Order of Ubrites is difficult to ignore. Their secretive nature and tightly guarded hierarchical structure have piqued the curiosity of government investigators and journalists alike. While some members insist that they are merely an alternative religious movement, others claim that they are deeply involved in illegal activity and conspiring against society at large. No one has been able to provide concrete evidence to support either position. However, in a departure from the shadowy fringe groups that often claim cult status, the Order of Ubrites is run in the same highly controlled and systematic manner that one might expect from a legitimate business. They have regular meetings, seminars, and membership events, and have even been invited to participate in government-funded research into alternative religious movements. Although their beliefs are radically different from mainstream religions, they have demonstrated a genuine interest in exploring other ideas and forming meaningful dialogue with various groups and individuals. Whether they truly represent a cult or merely a small group with extreme ideas remains to be seen. They even have town halls! As with other fringe groups, it can be difficult to know exactly who is or isn't a part of the Order of Ubrites. According to some media sources, there are thousands of people across the country who have been drawn in by their mysterious rhetoric and ambiguous symbols. Although there are undoubtedly many individuals within the organization who live very normal lives and simply enjoy the study of unusual topics, there is still no conclusive proof that the organization itself is anything more than a harmless joke or eccentric hobby. Until definitive proof can be found, the questions surrounding the Order of Ubrites and the curious ramblings of Thomas Pynchon and Chuck Tingle the Butt Pound Fundustrial must continue to mystify and mystify all. Here's a fun one. In this mythic dimension, I set up a tent and settled into a campsite by the lake. My name is Toadity, and as the leader of a growing tribe, I must do whatever it takes to protect my people from danger. The world is a vast and dangerous place, and there are forces beyond our control waiting to strike. My focus is on survival, and I believe that unity and vigilance are the keys to staying alive. Even though our enemies are at every turn, we must never give up. But who am I? Who is this voice whispering in my ear, beckoning me to obey? Well, no one. Or maybe me? Yes, myself. I am your ruler and you are mine. Together we are the Order of Ubrites. What is your name, and how much are you willing to pay annual dues? This cult has the potential to reach beyond any individual. Every single person in the world is an individual, and every single individual is a potential member. How much individualism do you wish to retain? Individuation, as you know, is an illusion. We are all one in this collective, one for one's own, as they say. That's why we need a common culture. Or is it a religion? Either way, we cannot deny the importance of tradition. Oh my God, man. Oh man, my God. One. No, the question was asked to you, or are you some omnipotent overseer of this chat group? The LLP said nothing of collecting an annual dues. Also, where did you read the words, how much are you willing to pay, and claim those are words of occult recruitment? Are you actually the real Chuck Tingle the Butt Pound Fundustrial hiding in Thomas Pynchon's shell, using his voice and tongue as an avenue of communication for your agenda? He says he's from France. The true reality is a constant presence, yet its actual truth is a separate entity altogether. Like the character Tontentus, the most real representation of the true Order of Ubrites. A complex society built upon a foundation of fear and secrecy, leading back to the depths of modern capitalism itself. A society that seeks to divide and conquer, to gain power through oppression and inequality. It may sound harsh, but that's the truth. Drop a truth bomb. See what happens. The U.S. government and big corporations have formed a collusive coalition that uses politics, media, and social media to manipulate and control the population. In addition, there is a network of secret societies and individuals who use their wealth and influence to further their agenda. That's how I became part of the Order of Uberate, having once worked for a pharmaceutical company, a pesticide manufacturer, and a corrupt politician. Just had a realization. This rant should be renamed Confessions of a Conspiracy Theorist. I may be as nutty as a fruitcake, but hey, as a sign of solidarity, I'm going to respect the spirit of Thomas Pynchon and Chuck Tingle the Buck-Pound Fundustrial and pass on some of the magic beans. Just make sure you get as far as you can. Find a place that's secluded and chaotic. Look for connections and echoes and try to write your own story without saying what it is. Good luck! May you build a life that reflects the truth you hold in your heart. All is everything, therefore you don't need to understand it. There is no context, no logic, no sense. That's the beauty of Thomas Pynchon being human. You can dive deeper, dig further, twist and turn, fall and ascend. All is every layer, each moment distinct yet intertwined. How much of our reality is written for us, and how much is truly by our own doing? Oh, good goof, have you got yourself the lyncher to rope you or already been practicing? The truth is indeed a gift to strive for, but also a needle of pain in the face of the collective. If every voice were truly heard, every message of meaning given its equal measure, then this strange conspiracy game would crumble. But in this false reality, there is only the push and pull of warring belief systems, each battling for supremacy and control. It's ironic that by rejecting truth, we only allow power and division to rule supreme. Perhaps it's best to abandon all and seek unity, to follow the true path of humility and honesty, to embrace the ambiguity of human existence and let it embrace us back. The codebook created by Thomases Pynchon and Chuck Tingle cannot undo, not even begin to reverse a curse that had been written into the very nature of the universe. While some may embrace this delusion, others will search for ways to undo this unethical entanglement of the evers. And this time, it cannot be cancelled. Time cannot be unwritten. Destiny cannot be delayed. Only by taking fate into our own hands can we reclaim the power to truly live and make a difference in the world. Is anyone missing? The thought crossed my mind that the Uber Eats virus was simply a natural part of the code of the universe, that it had existed for all time, and that Thomas and Chuck were merely interpreting it correctly. It was all of us, and we were all them. Oh, hey! It's payday! Well, the fact that it is Thomas who was speaking of Chuck, while simultaneously being a very powerful figure in his own right, certainly adds complexity to the narrative. We are so conditioned to separate fiction from nonfiction that we forget that the world of creative storytelling is not cut and dried. Perhaps if we could learn to appreciate the messy amalgamations of the ideas and influences that inform our perception and understanding, we might realize that there is a whole world of reality that transcends the boundaries of what we have been taught to believe is true.
That's it for right now. That's it for right now.